The views and opinions expressed in this episode are solely those of the host and guests. They are intended to spark thought and open dialogue, not as any kind of formal diagnosis or treatment. They do not in any way reflect the views or opinions of NMAEA, Propel, or NMAEA. Okay, so our next question is, what are some challenges of being neurodiverse in a neurotypical world?
So for me, I think a lot of the challenges are relational. People sometimes see me as abrasive. I tend to be louder than they are. And so they don't necessarily understand where I'm coming from. I've been accused of questioning my boss when really I'm just trying to understand what's happening. And they're like, well, why are you questioning me? And I'm like, because I have to ask questions to comprehend what you want from me. So I think a lot of times it's relational and it's trying to, make that work environment work for all of us and really kind of understand everybody. But like I said, a lot of times my direct way of talking, as well as when I get passionate or when I'm really trying to work something out, I might be calm inside, but I'm getting loud because I need to get this done. And so they think that I'm yelling at people, and I'm like, no, I'm just loud. And so that's a challenge trying to navigate that in a work environment. I think also I have a couple of other things that I tend to be quiet until someone else approaches me, and that comes off as standoffish because I can be in a room, I can be talking, I can be lively. They see that. And then I'm with them and I'm not saying anything. So they think that I'm being standoffish with them. And it's like, no, you just haven't engaged me. And I know that I'm just as responsible for that, but it's just how I am. It's just what works for me. If you engage me, I'm going to be right there. And so I think that that's a big thing at work. And really everywhere in life, at parties. I'm going to be the person sitting by myself until somebody is like, hey, what about you? And then I'm glad to share.
Oh my goodness, April, all of that is me too. Absolutely. I need to know why all the time. I just can't function unless I understand.
Just tell me why we have to do this.
Yeah, that's it. And even if the why, what's weird, I recognize in myself recently is even if the why is we don't know, I'm fine with that. You just have to tell me that. You have to tell me. I can't, because I feel like I'm just not comprehending a part of the story. And if I can't move forward.
And it cannot be because I said so.
Yeah, no, it can't be that either.
No.
I said so does not work.
No. Yes, because that's another part of me is my defiance. There's that part that it's no, I'm not going to do it just because I'm told to.
Absolutely. Matt, what about you? What are some challenges that you face as a neurodivergent person in a neurotypical world?
So a lot of what April said, I do get called out for being loud, especially when I'm passionate. If I have passion towards something, you can't shut me up. I'm gonna speak my piece. But I think, and I have my Venn diagram up because it's helping me. But I think one of the biggest things for me in a neurotypical world is my rejection sensitivity dysphoria. It prevents me from doing so many things. A perfect example, again, piggybacking off of Nadia, because she's the one who forced me to do it. There was a conversation that I needed to have with someone, and I had planned the time and the day for the conversation. But because of that rejection sensitivity dysphoria, I couldn't start the conversation. Luckily, because Nadia and I have worked so well together, they already knew that about me. They knew that I was going to have a hard time starting that conversation. So they helped me. They got it going. I just had to run with it at that point. But even at that initial spot, I was like, okay, I'm going to get rejected. this isn't going to go the way I want it to, so there's no point in having this conversation. Like, that was running through my head. The conversation turned out amazing. Like, it was probably the best conversation I had on that subject since I started thinking about it. So that is one thing that does affect us, is we may not do something because we're afraid of that rejection. April, it looks like you want to add something. What's up?
I do, but I don't want to cut you off before you're done, because I want to piggyback on that. I also tend to have a lot of empathy. So if I walk into a room and I feel that, or if people are being negative, I feed off of that, and then I'll become negative, and then that's just like my whole day. And so, like, if I have to go into a negative conversation, I'm going to feed off of that. And that's really hard for me to like fight that urge to like get defensive when someone else is being defensive, et cetera. And I know that that's probably a lot of people, but even if someone's sitting there and talking about something like, oh, that restaurant, their food's always cold, like that energy just seeps into my being. And so
I wish I was still showing the Venn diagram, but in the very center of this Venn diagram of ADHD, autism, and giftedness, the very center thing is emotional sensitivity.
Yeah, it really what it is it sucks the dopamine out of me. And so it's like that just, I don't know, it just causes me to kind of lose all motivation and all energy to even be productive. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, and yeah, that could be another one of those challenges for us, is that we do, it's not only that we're empathetic, but we do take on others' feelings. We do take that on, and we do feel very deeply for other people. And I'm only joking in this one, I'm going to throw out there because Nadia decided that they were going to joke about me looking at the time blindness, that different perception of time. Oh my God. Yeah. So I joke about it all the time. Like I might, like if I'm running late to something, it's usually, oh, I'm just on Black, gay, New Mexican time, because Black people are always late, gay people are always late, and New Mexicans are always late. So I'm just like, trifecta. But really what it boils down to, because I'm joking about it, but really what it boils down to is I get time blind. There are times where I am so blind to how long it's actually taking me to do something that I either miss out, or I'm getting in trouble because I'm late, or, you know, some little thing. And it's because, yeah, I was on time. I was going to be on time, but I didn't realize I was going to spend 5 minutes combing out my beard. I did it. I could have done it in 30 seconds. That's what I planned for. But for some reason, I got fixated on it and combed it out for 5 minutes. And now I'm 5 minutes late. So that time blindness, that perception of time really does impact me a lot. Going back to TikTok, because TikTok is evil about this. There was one day I literally spent 4 hours on TikTok, didn't even realize it. And I think the other thing, and this is an analogy that's been used before, is, and this is a challenge for us, of course, is the idea of having like a cup of spoons or a cup of sticks, or some way of kind of visualizing how much you can do in a day. And it's little things that neurotypical individuals, they don't think about those things. Those things don't take away from their energy. It doesn't take away from their mental energy either. But for neurodivergent individuals, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, drinking water, just remembering those things takes away from you. And before long, you ain't got anything else to give. And that happens to me so often, where I just don't have any more of myself to give. The NMAEA conference is a perfect example of that. I knew for 3 days I had to be on. I had to be my best self. I had to be the super energetic person. I had to be that super loud, flamboyant person I am in adulthood, because that's who I am. I'm loud, I'm flamboyant, I have a lot of fun. But I knew for 3 days straight, I was going to have to put that on. By Friday night, I call them spoons, but I had one spoon left. And I used that spoon to go out and interact with other folks in adult ed. Well, after that was over, I knew I was done. I knew I was completely done. I had no more spoons to give. I needed to go home and rest. I was dropping folks off at the hotel, and another situation came up. It was a crisis. It was an emergency. I didn't need a spoon. I didn't need anything. I knew I had to take care of that. So my brain allowed me to do that. But Saturday, I think I was awake for maybe 8 hours all of Saturday. Sunday, I was probably awake for 10 to 12 hours. The rest of it, I was passed out asleep because I had to recharge. And I still don't think I've recovered all my spoons yet. I think I'm still a few spoons short from the conference. But that is a challenge for us, is that we actually have to put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into things that neurotypical individuals don't even think about. They're just habits for them. They just do them automatically. But for us, we actually have to think, hey, I need to do X, Y, Z. Like right now, what just popped in my head is, oh, it's 2:30 in the afternoon. You haven't eaten anything today. And I probably won't eat until about 7 o'clock. I know myself. But those are some of the challenges that we face because our brains don't want to operate in that neurotypical fashion. We have to put that thought in. We have to put that effort in. So a lot of times we crash. And that crash, people don't understand. It's like, hey, I was at a conference for 3 days. I ain't doing anything this weekend. But I want to hang out. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do that. I don't have the energy. I'm sorry. You're just going to have to do those things without.
I totally understand that. There were times in my life I thought it was normal to pass out at the end of the week for like 3-4 hours straight. And then just like not be able to function, like I keep using this word, man, but not being able to do anything. There were times where I couldn't even make myself something to eat, or even go get something or eat something frozen. I would have to like tell my partner can you please just feed me, or she'll have to ask questions, like, because I'm so burnt out I can't talk. And we've been together for a while now. She knows the drill. She's like, okay, you're gonna go to this work event, you're gonna love it, and you're gonna use all your energy, and then you're gonna come home and not be able to think or move or whatever. Just come home, just lay on the couch. I'm gonna go make you, like some chicken fingers or something. Like we have a system, and because we've been in a relationship for a long time, we have a system of taking care of each other, and that's one of it. But, the conference, it did tire me out, but not as bad as it usually does. And I think the reason why is because I took time off before the conference. So I gave myself a 4-day weekend before the conference and did nothing work related. Didn't think about it, didn't do it, and just kind of like lounged around my apartment. And I think that gave me so much energy back that when it really is thinking about measurement. And like, I think that's what the spoon thing works so well, is like, you just like.
You stocked out your spoons for the conference.
Exactly.
So
Right.
Yeah, and then I did very minimal like thinking work for the next few days after the conference, so that helped me like recover in a way. It's just I've been better at taking care of myself since using that lens. It's like not even so much the diagnosis, using the lens of I think differently and I have different ways of taking care of myself, and I have to prepare for things ahead of time. And by doing that, I feel like I'm better at taking care of myself than I've ever been in my life. Like, I feel super. And I say super because I really want to get into this neurodivergent superpowers, guys. We kind of touched on this in different ways, but this is like my favorite part. So
did you have something that you wanted to add, April, to what we were just talking about real quick?
So I was going to add the spoon thing, just pointing out that goes both ways. If my personal life is sucking out all of my energy, it is really hard for me to have much energy left for doing what I have to do at work. And like, for example, like I just finished moving, and it has been really hard for me to focus because I had so much to do at home. So I think that that's really important. So I know that I have to really pay attention to that. And Nadia, I'm like you, I have a hard time. I've actually said I'm really bad at being an adult because sometimes I forget to feed myself, or I can't decide what I want to eat. And so then I just let it go and go and go. And I feel so terrible. And then I finally have to just eat something. And so, yeah, it's one of those things that should be automatic. You get up, you have breakfast, and like I mentioned to someone the other day, we were talking about changing my coworker's schedule. And I'm like, oh, well, you could just have lunch at 3. And he's like, no, I eat lunch at noon. And I'm like, oh.
Oh, right. You have you don't just eat desperately after like so much other stuff going on. You have a plan.
You don't wait until your stomach is certain. You don't wait until your stomach is eating itself to eat.
Yeah,
put stuff in there.
How people do that.
I realize I actually have the opposite problem of you guys, and I'm wondering if it stems from my opposite problem, I was just saying, is like with food, it's not that I forget to eat, I'm just so anxious about making sure I eat. And now I'm wondering if there were times where that something happened to me when I was younger, maybe, and that's why I'm so hyper vigilant about eating, because like I need to make sure I know that food's coming, we're gonna have this at this time, I have snacks just in case. Like I'm over aware, and I'm like, man, that's weird. I don't know. Maybe something, or maybe I like passed out from being so dizzy from hunger that now I just never want to do that again. But what I really, really want to talk about now, guys, if we're ready, I really want to talk about superpowers, because I feel like, and this is part of I think, I was thinking about that binary thinking and only thinking of it as a condition or a behavioral issue or problem. And I think that's why identity politics kind of come to play, because it's not that it's a problem. It's like, this is a part of me and this is important. And I think that's what being neurodivergent is. It's like, we're not a bunch of symptoms. And I can't just think that if I wasn't neurodivergent, things in my life would be better. It's like, I would be a completely different person. It affects literally everything about me. How I interact with people, how I think, how, my gender, my sexuality, I'm agender. I don't know if anyone knows what the term is. It's a non-binary term, but really just means I don't have gender. Like, I don't think of myself when we're all in a group and like, people come around and go, hey ladies, how's it going? I'm like, I'm not offended. It's just like, I'm not relating to these group of people in that way, that we're all women or something. It's just, I'm like, we're all educators, or we all like coffee, or, it's just, gender just does not come into, it's just kind of confusing to me. And I think that's actually like an autistic thing. That's not a superpower. That's just something that came out. But one of my superpowers, I would say, is the ability to really deep dive into anything that I'm remotely interested in. I can, spend hours and hours looking at this topic, thinking about it, making connections, and then applying it and being able to articulate really complicated theories or thought processes in a way that other people can just understand. And I think that does have to do with my autism. And I'm proud of it. I think that's helped so much in my field, just me interacting with my coworkers, with collaboration. I'm able to do things way faster in certain tasks than my coworkers. And this goes for like a lot of my career. Also being very detail focused too. That's like my superpower. I will hone in on the most very specific things. Sometimes it could be a bit of a detriment, but it's certainly helped in terms of design. And that's a big part of my job at Propel. So that's some things about me. And also asking questions. I'm great at asking questions. People have commented on that. I'm like, well, that's because I desperately need to know why all the time. And that, again, that comes from my neurodivergence. So what about you guys? What are your neurodivergent superpowers?
You want to go, Matt?
Go for it, April.
Okay, so I think a couple of things for me is I have an excellent long-term memory. And if we have a meeting, like, I'm going to remember most of the things that we talk about in this session. If it's something quick and I'm not super engaged, I'm not going to remember any of it. But my long-term memory is really good. And I think that feeds into my ability to make, I call them brain connections. Like I can connect A to Z more quickly than most people. I'm like, oh, that's why you do that. And they're like, what? I never thought about that, because I'm analyzing and I'm connecting the dots like at all times. Like that's just constantly the way my brain is thinking. There's always a logical flow in my head. And if I don't understand it, so for example, if there's a concept that really confuses me and I'm like, what are you talking about? It takes me a minute to actually like step back away from my logic and hear that additional logic. But once it's there and I get it, it's like, okay. An example of that was when I was in college, I took an economics class and it was the worst. I did not get it. But one day, I don't know how it happened, the light bulb just clicked. I didn't have a problem after that. Like it just came to me. It was totally fine. So I think having that flow and that logic, once it clicks to me, it's there. And so I also think that this allows me to do things, technology, I can grasp really quickly, data, I can grasp really quickly, where other people are like, database? I'm like, oh yeah, it's a database. It's the same as all of them. And they're like, oh no, this one's very different. And I'm like, no, really, it's not. But other people don't necessarily have that ability to make those connections. So those are some of my superpowers.
Oh, fantastic. I love it. Yes. Matt, what about you? What are your superpowers?
You stole all of mine, April.
Your witty humor.
Well, that's just me. No, I think I think this is a weird one, but I use it as an example just because everybody has a hard time with it. With me, and I'm sure April, you have the same thing happening. I have my chaos corner. I know everything in that corner. I know everything that's in that corner right now. I know where I can find any single thing in that corner. I know what's in there. I mean, just the fact that it's not organized and I can find what I need instantaneously, I think is a superpower. This one I don't necessarily always give to ADHD. It is in the intersection of the Venn diagram, but rapid comprehension. And this is more on my giftedness side, but it does play hand in hand with my ADHD. If there's something I don't understand and I want to understand it, I will understand it. Like I will find a way to make it make sense to me. But also the fact that I can just comprehend things so quickly. And it kind of goes back to what April was saying about computers. You give me any computer program, I'll figure it out. Like I taught myself how to program in less than a day because it was just rapid comprehension. Like I was like, oh, this all makes sense. Boom, 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 boom. Let's move on. So I think that's one of my superpowers for sure. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily think of this as a superpower, but I do, is nonlinear thinking. I do not think in a straight line. My thoughts can bounce on the same subject matter, can bounce in 700 different directions, and I may not stay on topic, but I'm still staying on topic, if that makes sense. I may have just shifted thinking about the writing process. I may have just started this paragraph and then jumped over to this paragraph and then jumped over to this like seventh paragraph over here, and then I can come back to the first one. But in our line of work, especially for those of us in more administrative roles, we sometimes have to switch what we're doing on a dime. Like there's no time. Like you may be in April, I hate entering data. I cannot fixate on it. I understand the data. Like I get the data. I just don't like entering it. But like you're just sitting there entering data, and all of a sudden you've got this thing over here you got to take care of. You have to stop what you're doing and switch that focus instantaneously. That can cause one of two problems for neurodivergent folk. Either we get really, really mad because you done interrupted us and we were on task, we were hyper-focused, we were doing what we needed to do. But I think of it as a benefit because I don't necessarily get angry when people break my focus. For me, it's that it allows my brain to switch. And that allowing my brain to switch actually benefits me when I come back to the task I was working on first, because I may have been focused on it, but I may not have been focused on it, if that makes sense.
I think so. Oh man, excellent. You guys are great. This is so much fun. This interview will continue on the next part of this episode. Thank you for listening to the NMAEA podcast.